in to another episode of Getting Wild with Terry and Friends, NHL preview show edition. And today we get the Carolina Hurricanes, one of the teams that are they're actually tied with Pittsburgh for the best odds to win the Metropolitan Division this year. Basically, to start, at one point in the offseason, I wasn't too high on Carolina. I didn't really like their offseason, getting rid of Niederreiter, getting rid of Trocheck, Max Domi. But one of the more recent signings, which we'll get to, and we'll just jump right into it, kind of really changed my opinion of this offseason. And that was Paul Stastny. I really think Stastny is going to be a great addition. When I was looking at Carolina's team, I thought they're a bit short when it comes to the center ice position. And they went out and they dealt with that. So obviously here, as I said, Domi, Trocheck, Niederreiter, Ian Cole, Levo, and Brennan Smith. But those main three are the top three when it comes to subtractions. But if you look at additions, Ryan Dzingel, depth, forward, Paul Stastny, not the same as Trocheck, but I think we'll step in just fine in the lineup for Trocheck. Pacioretty was meant to be the replacement for Niederreiter, I guess, but Pacioretty will obviously be injured to start the season. But Mackenzie McEachern, Andre Cachet, Brent Burns, that was a really interesting trade. Brent Burns finally gets dealt and is heading to Carolina. So going from the Sharks to Carolina, I'm sure Burns is excited. This is a very good team. And I have him projected to be on the top pair. So we'll have to see there. Dylan Coughlin and then Zachary Sawchenko as well. A pretty good offseason for the Hurricanes. Lots of changes here. Obviously, Trocheck, Niederreiter, Max Domi, not as big of a piece, I think, but Trocheck and Niederreiter have been a big piece of Carolina, of their team the last few years. So obviously sad to see them go, especially I know a lot of Carolina fans love Niederreiter. I loved him when he was on Minnesota as well. He's a hard guy not to like, but I think Carolina did well in the additions. Ian, what do you think here? Carolina's additions and subtractions this offseason.
Yeah, Carolina had a good team last year. They made some changes and they come back and they probably still got a very good hockey team. That's the way I see it. I don't think the losses are detrimental. I don't think the losses are going to be, whoa, all of a sudden we're just going to fall apart this year. They're not those kind of losses. I think in the case of Max Domi, if you bring him back, you might have been guilty of prisoner of the moment type of deal where, he gave you that amazing performance in the Game 7 against Boston in the first round last year. But really, when you peel back the layers, the onion, if you will, and you look back on the grand scheme of things, it wasn't really a great season for Max at all. And it was really, he just found a little spurt there in the playoffs out of nowhere. That's not necessarily something that I have that sense that I don't think Carolina saw that as anything. Well, Max Domi now is going to have a 30, 40 goal season for us coming up. I think it was more just, he got on a little bit of a run there and he took advantage of it. Give him credit. But I think Don Waddell was pretty much thinking that, we're going to let him walk because really for the regular season, it was pedestrian for Domi last year. The Trocheck and Niederreiter absences are a little bit more impactful, obviously. Those are bona fide, top six forwards right there for your team. Huge offensive catalysts, really for Trocheck both ways of the ice. But you can't always keep anybody, and at least if you're going to lose players of that caliber, you better replenish them. They were able to do that with the likes of Paul Stastny, of course, Pacioretty in a deal with Vegas. Assuming he's healthy, there's the guy to take the goals that you lost with Niederreiter from last year's team. Stastny, I mentioned this before. It was a nice pickup in that he's going to help your team in so many different ways. Is Paul Stastny going to be the offensive point producer, goal scorer he was in his heyday with Colorado or previous stints, Winnipeg even? No. But what he's going to do for your hockey team is chip in a little bit offensively, be sound away from the puck, good and defensively, win big faceoffs for you, play in a bunch of different situations, and do the things that at playoff time are going to be invaluable to your team's success. And that's what Paul Stastny will help you do. No question about that. Again, Pacioretty, they basically got him from Vegas for nothing. So if you're Carolina, you're just basically getting a free Christmas gift here in the middle of the summer. So you gotta like that if you're them. Andre Kasha is someone that we saw in glimpses last year with Toronto. When he was on the ice, he wasn't that bad. But again, health continues to plague this guy. And that's probably going to end up being what sets him back again this year. It's just he's at the point now where you just can't count on him for a full season. Brent Burns, a player that, yes, best days behind him a little bit, but still someone that can eat up minutes, play big minutes, play in situations that are plentiful for your hockey team. So it's a nice ad, and it's not like they needed a bunch of defensive help, but Brent Burns certainly adds that. And now when you put Brent Burns on this blue line, you put him with Jacob Slavin, that is just an outstanding pair. And the nice thing for Burns at this stage of his career is Slavin can do the heavy lifting. Slavin's the younger guy. Slavin's probably the better defender now at this stage of his career. He is better in his own zone right now than Burns is, Jacob Slavin. So if Burns wants to get a little more creative now, move the puck a little bit more, take some chances, jump into the rush, you could probably do that a little bit more. Whereas in San Jose, he does that, they're in big trouble because they don't have the defensive depth Carolina does. So that's going to be a nice fit, I think, if indeed Rod Brind'Amour goes with Slavin and Burns as his top pair. Brady Shea with Brett Pesce on the second pair is very strong, in my opinion. That's as good a second pair as you could ask for. And now you've got options with your third pair with Bear, Chatfield, Gardner, and Coughlin based on bringing in Burns and bringing in Coughlin as well for a little bit more depth. So they lose some key guys, but the key thing for Carolina, for a team that's in a win now mode right now, their window is Stanley Cup in the next few years. They lost some key players, but they replenished them and filled those voids, filled those holes with capable, if not in some cases, better replacements. So very, very solid, sturdy, sound offseason that is going to keep Carolina on that trajectory toward being a big-time contender in the East.
Yeah, I pretty much totally agree with everything you said. Pacioretty, if he can stay healthy, obviously he's injured to start the year, but if he can come back and actually play the rest of the season healthy, this was a great offseason for Carolina. I think they really improved their team. But it'll kind of hinge there on Pacioretty's health. I was having health issues in Vegas. I'll have to see what he does here. But I agree about the Brent Burns. I think he might be a good player to target with player props this year. If you're right, and he's always been an offensive guy, but if he's given the opportunity to take more offensive chances, he's going to be really good with player props this year. Tim is saying Sabres for the Cup. He's excited for the Sabres show.
I think he's going to come in here every preview show and just say that in the chat.
Basically,
Sabres for the Cup. Yeah.
Richie smashing the like. Thanks a lot, Richie. But we'll move on along to the next part of the show, and that's top prospects and free agents. So basically with the cap situation, I changed it up a little bit here because I'm still not 100% sure on how all the cap rules work, but Cap Friendly is showing that they are a little bit over the cap at 85 million, but it doesn't appear to be counting the 11.5 million that's on IR. So that's what I've done here is put what I've seen on Cap Friendly. And then they do have 11.5 billion that is not being counted on LTIR or LR. We don't know exactly where they'll fit on that. But prospects, nothing that really stands out here as like a top tier prospect. Jack Drury should be pretty good for the future. There's question marks with the other guys. Kocheskov played pretty well in the games that he did play with Carolina last year. And if they have that goalie there for the future, this team is not going away anytime soon because they still have young guys in the lineup that are not technically top prospects like Seth Jarvis and other guys. But prospects, not really the best here. Cap situation, not really the best. They'll have to figure something out when Pacioretty is healthy again. And then Jake Gardner. Upcoming free agents, some big names here. Pacioretty, who is, I guess, only here. His contract is ending after this year. Jordan Stahl, Jesper Fast, Andre Cash, Dylan Coughlin, and both goaltenders are unrestricted free agents after the year. So it'll be interesting to see. Carolina's been a team where, with goaltending, they've kind of changed it up. They haven't really had a goaltender that's stayed there and played a long period of time for a while. We'll see if they commit long term to one of these guys, but I don't really know at their stages of the career if that would be the route Carolina would go down. But they do have questions upcoming after this season. So it'll be interesting to see what they do here. Ian, what do you think about Carolina's prospects and big list of upcoming free agents?
Carolina, the reason why Carolina is a really good organization, they've become really one of the, well, at least in terms of the hockey ops. I could say other things about the ownership because Dundon sometimes, does some things that have me scratching my head I don't like in terms of the way he operates from an ownership standpoint. But as far as the hockey ops and the hockey management goes, the reason why Carolina is good every year is because they've actually managed to, even though they've been contending for the cup now for a few years and will be again this year and probably for a few more years, their draft prospect pool hasn't taken a huge hit because of it. Like some other teams in this situation that are contending every year and they wipe out their prospect pool. They wipe out the number of draft capital they have. That hasn't been the case with Carolina. And with the draft capital they've had, they've hit home runs with those picks. That's the big difference. They've really gone after a lot of European forwards, Finnish, Russian, Swede players, because a lot of other teams kind of or ignore them, and sometimes we'll go to the, like if there's a comparable Russian versus a comparable American or Canadian, or a comparable Finn or Swede versus a comparable American and Canadian, Carolina will take the shot on the European player. And a lot of times these have been working. These have been winning, these picks for Carolina. And they are loaded in the blue line with prospect talent, with Alexander Nikishin, with Tarmo Rajanen, Alexei Haimo-Salmi, Dominic Fensore. I mean, they've got an incredible amount of depth right now on the blue line from the drafts of the last few years. So very, very impressive to see how well they've drafted. And they've done really a solid job in spite of the fact that they have they've given up some draft capital. They have given up some prospects. And yet the pipeline, especially when it comes to the blue line, is still extremely good, for this Carolina team. So it's very impressive when you look at it. The forward group, not quite as depth-laden in the prospect pool as the blue line, but still very good. And, of course, they've got still waiting in the wings, maybe their goalie of the future. We saw a little glimpse of him last year down the stretch in Pyotr Kochetkov for Carolina. So, they're in a good shape with the prospects, considering, they're not obviously top 5 or 10, but they're above average, and that's stunning, because of the fact that they've been all in every year now the last few years to try to win a Stanley Cup. As far as the free agents go, Jordan Stahl, the captain, you wonder, even though he's a UFA and older, will they try to bring him back on a minimal deal, short-term deal, just maybe try to end his career in Carolina? I could see that. Jesper Fast, want to keep him, but you can't keep everybody. It depends on what kind of season he has. You'd expect him to have a nice year because he'll be playing for a contract. Max Pacioretty, I think this could be a one-year thing. I'm not totally convinced he's back long-term. They'd like him to be, but again, when you're talking about injury hesitancy is, I think, what is clouding the judgment here for Don Waddell and the GM and the management team of the Hurricanes, that maybe Max Pacioretty's not going to have a healthy season again. And if that's the case, we're not going to jump in right now and try to get a long-term deal done with this guy. We need to see evidence of him not only producing, but staying on the ice, for an 82-game season. Freddie Anderson, probably his days are done after this season. It'll be interesting to see if he can bounce back, because look, Freddie Anderson finally stayed healthy for the majority of the regular season, and then we got into the playoff right at the end of the regular season there, and the old Freddie Anderson bug came up again. Like I say, we just another guy that we just can't count on to finish a season or get through an entire season. So that's unfortunate. Antti Ranta, I thought, made a very nice account of himself in the playoffs last year for Carolina. Tough spot with Freddie Anderson out. He had to take over, and I thought he did a nice job in the playoffs for Carolina. And I'm certainly that performance is what gave them solace, knowing that he was going to be on this team again this season. So that they've got a guy there that played well for us down the stretch. But certainly goaltending's interesting because you got these two older goalies. Both of them have battled nagging injuries. Both of them haven't really played a full season. And then you got the young kid waiting in the wings. So I honestly think they're going to give Kochetkov a lot of looks in training camp and a lot of looks in preseason to see if he can be on this opening night roster.
Yeah, and if he does make maybe one of these two get traded. I can't see Carolina re-signing.
They won't carry three goalies. Yeah. If Kochetkov makes the team out of training camp, someone's getting dealt. There's no doubt.
Yeah. And even in the offseason, if for some reason he's not ready, he needs another year, it would be smart to look at maybe moving one of them at the trade deadline or in the offseason there. But going along to their possible lineup. This was a fun one to do. We'll take a look at it here. And I have 4 goalies listed because obviously, like we're talking about Kochetkov there.
And don't forget about Sachenko, who actually played for San Jose a little bit last year. He's actually got some NHL seasoning under his belt.
Exactly. That's why I have them both there, because they could be potentially tied. You never know. They're both kind of backup goalies in case one of the top 2 get hurt. So really a goaltending, Carolina's looking pretty good. If you take a look at their defense, Slavin and Burns, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, Coughlin, Ethan Bear. That's a really good top 6. Jalen Chatfield as well. Jake Gardner injured. But overall, the defense is really good. Like that's a very good defense to have. And then you look at the forward group, even without Pacioretty right now, Svechnikov, Aho, Teravainen, Jordan Stahl, Jesper Fast, Seth Jarvis, Martin Necas might find his way on the second line. Obviously, this is just what I put together, but Paul Stastny and Martinuk, Peterson, Kotkaniemi, and Kashe. Derek Stepan invited to camp. So potentially maybe see him in the 4th line center, Kotkaniemi maybe on the 3rd line. Who knows? But Dzingel as an extra. This team is pretty set depth-wise. They have some guys that can step in. Their bottom 6 looks pretty good. Their top 6, their defense, goaltending. Carolina looks pretty set up, I think, for this season. And then if and when Pacioretty and Gardner jump into this lineup, we'll talk about Cup futures in a bit. But Carolina is the first team that I'm looking at here thinking they could finally take a step forward here. So we'll definitely have to see when the season comes. But Ian, what do you think about the possible lineup for this Carolina team?
Yeah, well, really, there's not a whole lot of change up front, to be quite honest with you, or throughout, to be with this lineup. There's a couple. Obviously, Brent Burns, we mentioned him coming in on the blue line. But really, you got Slavin, Shea, Pesce, Bear. Coughlin's a new face, but he may not crack the top 6. We're not sure. Gardner was there last year, but was, a healthy scratch a lot of times. But, not a whole lot of turnover with the blue line or the forward group. I mean, these are all the same familiar faces we remember last year. Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis. If they reunite to form a great top line, I would expect that. Paul Stastny is going to fit in nicely, I would think, on the second line with Teravainen. Who do you put there on the second center spot? Do you put Jordan Stahl up there? Do you hope that Kotkaniemi can kind of finally feel comfortable year 2 now in Carolina? Because look, Kotkaniemi was an underachiever last year. Didn't really take off with the Hurricanes getting out of Montreal the way a lot of people hoped. But maybe you try Kotkaniemi in the second center spot just because more of an offensive upside to him than Stahl. But again, those are decisions that'll come down to the coach, Brind'Amour, Martin Nuke Fost, Andre Kasha, who is a guy that can contribute and help out offensively if he stays healthy. But again, a big if. Marty Necas, a guy that I've been looking for him to really solidify his place in the top 6 forward group, and kind of a disappointing year last year, but they still re-signed him for 2 more years. 14 goals, 26 assists. He didn't really have that jump in his point production that kind of we were all thinking. I mean, he's right around the same number of points, same number of goals he had the 2 previous seasons. I think there's better than that out of Marty Necas. I think he's capable of more than that. So we'll see if he's able to deliver that and push his name up the lineup a little bit for Carolina this year. Don't forget about guys that were pretty good in the AHL last year that are going to be, getting an opportunity to at least see if they can crack the team. Stefan Nason had a great AHL playoff last year. Jack Drury did as well. You're probably going to see some of him as well for the Hurricanes. So there's going to be some nice competition for the bottom 6 forward groups here for Carolina in training camp, and probably a good battle for the bottom 2 defensive spots as well. Because right now, Bear and Chatfield are penciled in, but you don't rule out Gardner. You don't rule out Dylan Coughlin, who they got in the offseason. So it's going to be a nice competitive training camp, I think, for Carolina when it comes to the bottom 6 forwards and for the bottom 2 defensemen. There's going to be some positions up for grabs, which could make this team a little bit of a bet-on team. If you bet preseason, which I don't, but if you do, usually position battles, kind of like NFL preseason, you want to be betting on the teams with something to figure out, reasons to really want to see their players succeed and thrive. And position battles are one of those things. So you might see that from Carolina. But no, this lineup should be able to score goals in the top 6, chip in enough in the bottom 6, because now you've got, Necas, you've got Kasha potentially as bottom 6 forwards, and those are offensively skilled players. This is a very deep forward group. The blue line 1 through 6 is as steady as it gets, and you've got some depth back there. Do you have questions with Ronta and Anderson, their health, their age? Of course you do. But that's why Pyotr Kochetkov is there, your goalie of the future, in case one of them or both of them either struggle or end up hurt. So you're in a good spot throughout this lineup. Depth at all positions if you're Carolina.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, even if they do take a little bit step back in goaltending, I think the rest of the team is so good that it's they could have average goaltending and still be a very good team. We'll move on along to the final part of the show, and that's talking futures, looking at the last 5 years for this Carolina team. And it's been a good last 5 years. They did miss the playoffs in 2017, 2018, but since then have made the playoffs all 4 years. Back-to-back second-round exits for Carolina. Conference finals loss and a first-round loss there as well. Looking at their point total, 102.5. They had 116 last year. So that is a big decrease in points for their futures. Obviously, minus 500 to make the playoffs, plus 380 not to. I wouldn't be interested in either of those because I think Carolina, if I had to pick a team that I think is pretty much playoff bound, okay, Colorado in the West, but if I had to pick someone in the East, Carolina would be kind of at the top of the list there as a team that I expect to make the playoffs. So no really odds there or no value there. Plus 250 to win the division. I think that could be a good look. The issue is that even though Pittsburgh is tied with them for the best odds to win the division at plus 250, there's another team that we'll be talking about from New York that has a star goaltender that I would possibly look at to win the division at nice odds. So I don't really see the plus 250 to win the division. Plus 1,100 to win the cup. I don't know. This Carolina team is pretty good. And I could see them making a run finally to go to the Stanley Cup. Fellow Ice guys with you, Ian, Alex, posted something. Melissa sent it to me. Someone asked about who he thinks who will beat who in the Stanley Cup and how many games this year. And he said Carolina beats the Wild in 6 games. So if that's true, I'm going to get my hopes up and have them crushed. But I hey, I could see this Carolina team going all the way this year. So plus 1100. If they do get off to a really good start, that number is going to decrease. So, but when it looks at the 102.5 points, 116 last year, that's a big step back. I don't think Carolina takes a big step back, so I'd have to look at the over in the point total and possibly to win the cup as well. Ian, what do you think about Carolina's last 5 years and their futures for this year?
Definitely, I'm in on the win the cup. I'm in on the win to win. I've been betting Carolina to win the cup like the last few years. So this is the Aiden Cameron tradition continues right here with Carolina to win the cup. I don't know about the division. I don't love the plus 250. It feels like I need a little more bang for my buck than that. And it wouldn't shock me to see the Rangers because I'm equally as high on the Rangers, if not more, with New York. So I might leave the division alone for Carolina, but certainly to win the Stanley Cup, they've got the capability. And again, I'm going to go back to the situation where if you want to be picky, you'll say maybe the fourth line where you're going to get your offense from, but I'm not concerned about that. You could have Andre Kasha playing on the fourth line. That guy's played top second line roles in previous stops, especially in his Anaheim days. He's got offensive talent. That guy can chip you in offense from a fourth line if that's where he starts. I don't worry about that for Carolina. They can get scoring from all four lines. I'm not worried about them there whatsoever. I'm not worried about the blue line, 1 through 6. They've got the bodies. They've got the depth. You know, if Ethan Bear gets hurt, you got Coughlin. If Coughlin gets hurt, you got Gardner. You know, if you've got an injury to Pesce or something, you can also alternate someone there. Someone will have to play more minutes if it's, you know, a Pesce or a Slavin that gets injured compared to your bottom two defensemen. But you've still got bodies. You've still got able, capable players to be able to put them in there in spots where you've got some injuries on the back end because they have the depth there as well. And remember, they've got that pipeline of prospects as well on the blue line that I mentioned in the previous segment that are waiting in the wings. Same with the goaltending. Are you concerned about Anderson and Ronta in terms of their performance level? Maybe, maybe not. Are you concerned about their injury history, which is not good? They somehow, it seems, get hurt at some point, both of them, every season. Of course you're concerned, but that's why you've got Pyotr Kochetkov there. So even there, I'm not worried. Like if Ronta struggles or gets hurt, if Anderson struggles and gets hurt, there's Kochetkov, who could be your number one goalie for many years to come down the road, ready to take over. And a guy that when he did get the opportunity last year, played fine. You know, was he spectacular? No. Did he have his weak moments? Yes. But he also looked fine. He didn't look like he was scared of anything, timid. He was aggressive in the crease, challenged shots, good rebound control, square to the shooter. And I like he's got a little competitive mean streak in him. You know, he's prodding Brad Marchand last year during the series, first round series against Boston. I like seeing that in Pyotr Kochetkov, a guy that's got a little, hey, I'm going to stick up for my team here, and I'm going to show you who's boss. I like that out of him. So a little spunk. Nothing wrong with that. So basically, Carolina is one of those teams, few teams in the league, where you could say forward group, they get injuries, they can replenish it. Defensemen get hurt, they can replenish it. Goaltender gets hurt, they can replenish it. I mean, they're well stocked at every position. It's a high point total, but we are talking about a team that got 116 points last year. Are they really going to drop by 114 or by 14 points rather this season and go from 116 to 102 or less? I don't see it. I like the over 102.5 with their point total. And I'm going to go with the Eastern. I'm going to go not only with the Stanley Cup futures, I'm going to go with the Eastern Conference futures as well on the Carolina Hurricanes. I'll pass on the division because I think that could be a toss-up between them and the Rangers, and I don't want to make a coin flip bet on a future. So I will just go with Carolina in the conference, which is around plus 550, plus 600, and of course to win the Stanley Cup, which is around that 11-1 mark.
I like it. Yeah, we're both high on the Rangers for sure. And Carolina doesn't really need to win the division to win the cup.
I could see that too. This could be a year where we fly under the radar, finish second in the division, maybe even finish third in the division. Just coast in through the regular season. Just get yourself into the dance. get yourself into the Stanley Cup playoffs, and then you turn it on and you play your best. They could be they might have that kind of mindset this year, maybe than unlike the last 2 years.
For sure. And that is today's show about the Carolina Hurricanes. Tomorrow will be the Columbus Blue Jackets. And obviously, when I did the stats here for Carolina and I did the stats for Columbus, I thought, whoa, we're going to have a completely different side of the spectrum tomorrow with Columbus. Their lineup's pretty rough. I don't think they're going to have very much success this year. Early preview to tomorrow's show, but definitely still tune in. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the content, smash the like button. We appreciate all the support. And we'll see you tomorrow for another episode. Getting Well with Terry and Friends. Have a good one, guys.